Well, thank you everybody for joining us for the fifth session of Aston University Pediatrics Department, Oxford, and 𝗬𝗲𝗄𝗏 co-hosting for TICAD8 side event, online side event. And today we have Professor Feiger from Aston University. George, because your title is so long, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, Koichi, I would be very happy to do so. I'm the Executive Dean of the College of Business and Social Sciences at Aston. It incorporates the Business School, the Law School, and the School of Social Sciences and Humanities.
And could you explain that Aston had awarded University of the Year 2 years ago, and also your background is so interesting. So can you just give?
Yes, sure. Yes, Aston was the University of the Year, and it was also the Entrepreneurial University of the Year, reflecting our particular focus on working to improve the performance of businesses in a variety of innovative ways. And one of those dimensions, in fact, is working on cybersecurity, which we do in partnership, obviously, with our mathematics department and the computer science school elsewhere in the university. And yes, in my case, I once was an academic. Then I worked for many years as a management consultant. I was a senior partner of McKinsey. Then I was the global head of investment banking for 𝗬𝗲𝗃𝗏𝗿𝗶𝘁𝘆 Warburg. I built and ran all of the private banking businesses of UBS outside Switzerland. And then I started a wealth management company and ran it for 10 years before taking up this position at Aston, which I've had now for a bit over 9 years.
Great. So please, we would like you to make some presentation. And for the audience who has questions, can you just put it in the chat box? We may ask you to speak out later, but George, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I want to make a few remarks about the connection between cybersecurity and financial integrity and economic development. In particular, I want to address one potential contribution of technological innovation to economic development and growth. Of course, there are many areas where technological innovation can contribute. For example, in the generation and distribution of energy, something that's very relevant, in health systems, and indeed, as the pandemic has taught us, in transformation of our education systems to connect many more people in many places. Speaking from the perspective of a university, the latter has changed our entire approach, as well as enhancing student learning and satisfaction. But I'm not going to speak about any of these things, rather about something that seems abstract and dry, namely techniques of money transmission. And I refer to the implementation of cyber-secure, centralized account-based money transmission and the associated accounting. As has been explained in detail in an earlier talk in this series by my colleague 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, this promises to save as much as 3% of global GDP by making domestic and international financial transfers virtually instantaneous and virtually costless. Now, these are efficiency gains obtained through bypassing current domestic and international payment systems. Today's systems involve multiple steps with their associated costs, as well as delays that permit valuation changes between the dispatch and the receipt of funds. The magic of the new approach is to move money from the account of origin to the account of destination in one step with complete security. Now, achieving such efficiency gains would be a great development for every country. However, in many countries, not least in Africa, there is a significantly bigger issue in money transmission than operational efficiency. Much of the money sent from the account of origin doesn't get to the account of destination because it is siphoned off, stolen, to put it more directly. I refer in particular to funds going to and from governments, as looting of the state is one of the more reliable methods of accumulating wealth. The struggles over looting of the state have been consuming South Africa, for example, but state looting is a worldwide phenomenon. Look for other examples at the states comprising the former Soviet Union or at Malaysia. You may ask whether technology is capable of tackling problems of this magnitude and complexity. The answer is clearly yes. Dramatic transformation facilitated by technology isn't a pipe dream, as can be seen by the impact of mobile telephone technology on farming in Africa. Direct market information through mobile phones allows farmers to make planting decisions and selling decisions in full knowledge of the value to the ultimate buyer. This disenfranchises the chain of middlemen who previously profited from the information differentials between the producer and the ultimate buyers, and so it raises the return to the farmers. The mobile phone system also facilitates a direct payment system that bypasses inefficient bank intermediaries. However, this analogy isn't perfect for the problem of state looting because it relates to information flows between private entities and private individuals, and the state is not involved. We need to deal with issues like revenues from resource extraction projects not reaching the national treasury because they pass through various holding entities in other jurisdictions and somehow shrink. Or funds from national treasuries also shrinking or disappearing on the way to intended beneficiaries. Another example, indeed another African example, countries where salaries are paid to non-existent soldiers and the money is pocketed by their unit commanders. Single-step money transmission using truly secure technology of the type proposed by the Japanese firm 𝗬𝗲𝗍 can be a key component of strategies designed to mitigate the state looting problem. I do stress component. Two things are required here. First, the ability to eliminate intermediary steps between the sender and the recipient of the money. And second, the ability to have complete certainty about who is at both ends of the transaction. The new unhackable one-step money transfer technology enables the first of these, the ability to eliminate all the intermediary steps. For the second, there is the need to create unique digital identities for individuals and other legal entities, which are also unhackable. India is one of the pioneering nations in creating unique digital identities for the entire population. The cybersecurity system of 𝗬𝗲𝗍, and no doubt others, provides the unhackable component. Of course, simpler technology can also help address simpler dimensions of the government looting problem. Here is an example from an at first unlikely place. Years ago, before the internet, and when I lived in Boston, there were toll booths on the Massachusetts Turnpike, the highway. At intervals, motorists would pay a cash toll to continue on the motorway. The toll taker's job would seem to be pretty awful, sitting in a very hot or very cold little box in the middle of a highway, sticking your arm out of an open window every few seconds. Yet, it turned out that these positions were so desirable that potential employees paid their managers $50,000 or $60,000 to be given the job. You will have realized very quickly that this was because there was no automated counting of vehicles, and the toll takers worked on the one for me, one for the state rule in taking the money from the motorists. The toll takers and their managers were looting the state right in the middle of Massachusetts. A less sophisticated technology solved this problem. The toll booths were closed and the toll system automated so that it wasn't possible to steal the toll money. There is a broader and also relevant conclusion to be drawn from this example. In any situation where state employee salaries are higher than comparable private ones, managers have the incentive and the opportunity to demand payment for appointment. So not only employee unions, but also managers will be in favor of higher state salaries. But, and this is a very important point, it is much easier to see and expose that, to return to my example, than these countless anonymous small cash transactions at toll booths. You will note that I have not referred to cryptocurrencies here, nor to so-called decentralized finance, neither of which are necessary for the potentially beneficial outcomes that I've been discussing. However, cryptocurrencies are related to state looting by the way in which they facilitate money laundering, because looted money usually needs to be laundered in some way. A representative money laundering activity might run as follows. Some official in a state health agency diverts money intended for hospitals to a shell company in a jurisdiction where the owners of the shell companies are not revealed. The shell company then buys an expensive house in London. In the UK, there is no way of looking through the shell company to the owners. The shell company then sells the house and transfers the proceeds to another shell company, also owned by the corrupt official. That official then directs money from the second shell company to pay for stuff like yachts and holiday homes, all of which are owned by the second shell. None of these purchases can be traced back to the original official, and the second shell company has acquired its cash proceeds from the sale of the London house, which is not an illegal activity. You don't need me to tell you that money laundering already works very effectively in the current framework of international money transmission. It too would be more secure and more efficient if undertaken with the 𝗍𝗲𝗍𝗶 technology or equivalent, but I somehow doubt that this efficiency gain is on the top of the money launderers' list of important things to do. Of course, it is the case that if the corrupt official were to buy, say, Bitcoin with the looted money, the proceeds of his looting would immediately become invisible and unable to be tied to him without the need for shell companies. But this isn't risk-free. Bitcoin, like all cryptocurrencies, has highly volatile value in regular currencies, so the proceeds might shrink dramatically on conversion. And conversion is almost always necessary because Bitcoin is very rarely usable for regular transactions. To book a hotel room at the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, the Bitcoins would need to be exchanged into euros. And even if Bitcoin were accepted by the hotel, the rate charged for the hotel room in Bitcoin would reflect the exchange rate between Bitcoin and euros, so the volatility risk would not be removed. However, I don't doubt that looters and drug launderers are willing, looters and drug dealers are willing to accept such volatility, and that cryptocurrencies are indeed a major vehicle for money laundering. But that is absolutely unrelated to the potential advantages of 𝗍𝗲𝗍𝗶 type innovations for what we might call the honest economy. So, in conclusion, I'm under no illusions that technology is a silver bullet for looting, something that can solve such a complex problem. However, secure point-to-point money movement to uniquely identified recipients can greatly narrow the opportunities for looting, and it leaves the remaining opportunities much easier to identify and to deal with. This also holds true for payments to governments from, for example, resource extraction companies. If it is unambiguous where the money goes, it becomes easier to see who has taken whatever is missing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George. George, can you elaborate Cyber Security Innovation Center, which is probably one of the first things in the UK, and the relationship with the UK government?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that the audience does not know the existence of Cyber Security Innovation Center. So if you could explain to the audience, that would be great.
Yes, so we have set up at Aston a Cybersecurity Innovation Center, which is a joint activity between the business school and the School of Engineering and Physical Sciences. And this reflects the fact that cybersecurity is not a narrowly technical issue. In fact, in most of the breakdowns, in most of the hacks in systems are not due to clever technical innovations. They're due to failures by individuals, procedural failures, managerial failures. And there are, of course, very important technologies like those of 𝗍𝗲𝗍𝗶 that remove the number of opportunities, if you like, for these managerial failures. But all real cybersecurity is a combination of management processes and technology. And we are relatively unusual in bringing together these two perspectives on in this case, money transmission. And we have been working intensively with the UK government to identify best practice, identify systems that will work. And of course, we now need to start explaining all of this to the many entities, public and private, that need to adopt these approaches and these technologies. And this is an activity that's sponsored by the government. We've been running conferences and have various other interactions, and these will continue, obviously, into the future.
I was very impressed that there was a general communication headquarter person was there on the opening ceremony last year. Is general headquarter communication headquarters, are they also a part of the government support to the Cybersecurity Innovation Center?
Yes, we have a long-standing connection with GCHQ because of our forensic linguistics work. Forensic linguistics is essentially, I guess from a technological point of view, it's statistical pattern recognition. The way you write a sentence, the way you use punctuation and things like that, the choice of phrases is as unique as your fingerprint. So in a way, it's unhackable. And right. We are, I would argue, we're probably the world's leading source of research into forensic linguistics. And we have worked extensively with police. We have had very well publicized success in catching pedophile rings, for example, who communicate through the web, and we've identified who these people are by the pattern with which they use words and phrases. And we have worked also with intelligence agencies and so on. And this is, as you correctly identify, quite close to this whole issue of cybersecurity. So in many different ways, Aston University has been working on using analytical techniques. Essentially, it's big data processing, language processing, and the issues we're discussing here, cybersecurity. They all are very similar. They're based on similar intellectual concepts, and they have similarly very large potential benefits for society.
Right. For the benefit of the audience, General Communication Headquarters is one of the intelligence agency, along with, is that MI5 and MI6?
Correct, yes, MI5, MI6. MI5 is the domestic intelligence agency, MI6 the international. And I guess everybody knows they have moved into the world of technology, of big data, and so on. And of course, no entities need security more than these entities.
Exactly.
Yes.
I agree. Any questions from audience, please? So recently, that Albanian government mentioned that there was a hacking and what people call very traditional attack called DOS attack by Iranian to Albania, and Albania's government initiative, which is was regarded as one of the best one, eAlbania, has been government site has not been worked for weeks, and this shows how the current system, which people believed to be very secure, is not actually secure. And the same happened for Estonia. Estonia had been hacked by Russians, deny, but then presumably Russians, for 4 times. Even that they claim that they are one of the best in the world. So I think that the cybersecurity issue is going to be more and more important. At the same time, as you, George, pointed out, this stealing money is always a problem for everyday things for cash. So cash first needs to be gone. And also most of the current payment, including card payment, is still the mixture of online and offline. But our philosophy is if we can get rid of all offline and everything is online, then immediately you could tell that if something goes wrong, if somebody is stealing illegally, then the people should be able to identify. So that's a sort of philosophy 𝗍𝗲 has.
Yes, I think that the point that you and others have made is that when quantum computing occurs, then it's possible to break every version of the current security system.
Correct. Yeah.
Encryption. Yes. Encryption this is an incredibly urgent issue because if you can hack everybody, then it becomes a total disaster.
Yes.
And the financial system, I mean, a lot of the hacking today is around ransom. We lock up all your data unless you pay us bitcoins or something. But
Yes.
the financial system has to be the single most important hacking target in the world, because that's where all the money flows.
Yes.
And there was, for example, some years ago now, a very successful hack by North Korea of the money transmission system of some country, where they managed to actually lift money entirely out of the central bank of I wish I could remember the name of the country, but if you can... Sorry?
Bangladesh to New York. Yeah, Bank of New York.
Yes. But that's an example of what can happen on a global scale if you can break these systems, because there is no more important locus of money than the financial system itself. And so these end-to-end secure systems are absolutely essential, or in a sense, everybody will be Albania, everybody will be Estonia, everybody will be Bangladesh. And so I have to say that that's urgent. But again, as I said at the beginning of my talk, more money is lost by far to state looting than to Russian hackers or North Korean hackers or anything else. This is a central problem of the whole world economy. And that's why I raised that issue rather than simply cybersecurity for its own sake. Yeah.
So, and the main audience, our main audience is African 54 countries. And I think that your comment is that that's everybody's problem. But if some country or African country would like to leapfrog, then they can do it with have a futuristic system in place.
Exactly so. I think that, I mean, we don't have time, but we can go through, as it were, the newspaper headlines of the last years. Virtually every country, and not only in Africa, as I say, Malaysia has probably had the largest state looting of any country recently, and Goldman Sachs, remember, paid them $3.5 billion as a fine for the cooperation in this. So these problems are worldwide, and really they are problems, of course, of governance and honesty. But if you have systems where it's clear who is stealing, it's easier to argue the honesty case. At the moment, the problem is you can't see what's happening. The money disappears like rainwater that soaks into the ground. And the beauty of these end-to-end point encryption systems is they start in one place, which you know, and they end in another place, which you know, and that's it. And at that point, you know what happened. Now, you may be dealing with dishonest people, but they can't claim they weren't involved. And this is a huge step change in what can be done in this regard.
Great. So Paul Nicholas Edwards has posted a question, but maybe it's already answered. Nick, would you like to give a verbal question to George?
Yes, George, thank you very much. I apologize, I came in late. I was having problems with my links. And as I was posing this question about quantum computing, you started talking about it. So as Kozhi said, yes, some of the you've dealt with it to some extent, but I guess if we look in a little more detail, quantum computing is a significant problem. How do you see security systems developing in order to cope with the problem of hackers who obtain a quantum computer?
Well, again, the technological part of it, I am simply not qualified to speak on, and I think Kozhi can. But I said earlier, and you missed this, if you actually look at hacking, a lot of hacking isn't clever use of advanced technology to grab passwords. It's behavioral in nature. It's people who use the word password as their password. It's people who don't follow the proper procedures for dealing with and moving around secure documents and things like that. So the quantum computing issue, which is essentially the ability to crack password security, is part of it. But again, I would guess, and I can ask some of my colleagues to confirm, more hacking is facilitated by behavioral problems than by technological issues. And so, yes, quantum computing is a really big thing, but even before all of this, people were getting into all of these systems, and that's why there's all this hacking all over the news all the time, because of managerial, operational, behavioral problems. And this has to be done together because, most of the problems have been people problems rather than technology problems. The technology problems will become much more important if you can hack everybody's password. But what I'm trying to say is you haven't needed to. Even in the current systems of password security, some of which are secure before you use quantum computing, it doesn't matter. People have cracked through them anyway. They failed to use secure channels. They exchange information on mobile phones. All of this. And so this is a much more complex issue than quantum computing. It's a behavioral and managerial issue at least as much, and will remain so however the technology evolves. The point I was making in what I said was that if you can clean up some of the technological issues, that leaves the behavioral things right in front of you, and then you can focus on those. At the moment, it's a whole mixture of things, and that makes it just much harder to manage. But I would really like to stress that it is not primarily an issue of technology. Think of it this way, it's like scissors. Both blades need to cut, or the scissors don't work. One blade is technology, the other is behavior. And the stuff that, for example, 𝗙𝗶𝗃𝗃𝗃 has been doing is on the technology blade of these scissors. But for the world to address these problems effectively, you also have to work on the organizational and the behavioral side. And so that's the response I would make. Koji will no doubt have a deeper comment on what I would call the technological dimension.
Thank you very much. That's very useful. I guess before Koji talks about 𝗙𝗲𝗃𝗃's technology, which, as we all know, is very significant and very exciting, you brought up the word, as I was just thinking of it, organizational. And one of the problems with large banks, for example, is that there doesn't seem to be organizational unity. I guess what your department, your institution is there for is to improve education, so that institutions understand how they should approach this whole issue. I don't know if there's anything more you would like to comment on there.
Yes, there is something which is actually one of the fundamental organizational problems in dealing with these kinds of issues. And I'll use something simpler, the compliance officer. Every financial institution and many others have a compliance function, right? And the compliance function is successful if nothing goes wrong, right? Nothing goes wrong. So there's no evidence that the compliance function did anything. If you are on the revenue generating side in a bank, if you bring in revenue, everybody says, oh, wow, congratulations, you've done a great job, and you get a bonus and you have an incentive to do it again. Compliance people don't ever bring in any revenue that's visible. They prevent massive losses, but the losses haven't occurred. I can't pay you 10% of the loss you've prevented, because we don't know what that is. And the result is the way these incentive systems work in financial institutions and in many others, they recognize the things that can be measured rather than the things that are important. And so all functions like compliance, like cybersecurity and so on, are seen as obstacles by the revenue generators. I mean, I ran an investment banking business and then a private banking business and so on. Having compliance, having people do things in a compliant way was always difficult, because they started shouting, well, you're getting in my way, and I could bring in more revenue if you didn't have to follow these rules and do this and that and the other. And this is quite a profound organizational issue. There is a wonderful saying in management, which I learned very early: people don't do what's expected, they do what's inspected. What's measured is what's controlled. And as long as losses, the prevention of losses, can't be measured, it's going to be very difficult to get organizations which are based on financial incentives to actually do what needs to be done. And this, I think, is one of the profound management problems in all of this, regardless of the technology, if that makes sense to you.
Yes, it does. And I'll just ask one more question and I'll shut up. I mean, your comments about compliance are resonant. I also have run a few organizations in my time. Yes, compliance can be annoying. My final sort of comment and question would be, I think the numbers now for Citibank are that something like 14% of all employees worldwide are involved in compliance. And that's up from 4% 10 years ago. And it's the same across all these organizations. I think the number I saw, the amount that the UK banks pay will spend on compliance every year is about £5 billion. So we have an innate contradiction here that at the same time that compliance is ballooning in terms of personnel and expense, obviously fraud continues to increase. How do we overcome this problem?
This is a problem of legacy. One of the reasons you need so many compliance people is because the pieces of the organization don't speak to each other. So something like know your customer, which is one of the core things, again, going back to my discussions of money laundering earlier. Know your customer is this fragmented thing where there are different where there are different entities in the banks. Let's stick with banks because you bring this up. Different entities in banks have different customers. There are retail customers, there are large corporate customers, there are small customers, there are customers in one country, there are customers in another country. And these organizations live with legacy systems. And the bigger the bank, the more likely it is to have been the amalgam of many mergers, which again, I facilitated in my previous career. And these data systems have never been, in effect, replaced by one coherent, unified data system. And the result is you have all these people essentially doing the same thing in different parts of these organizations and still not able to communicate effectively with each other. And when you look at some recent compliance-related scandals in banks, you'll see that they're seemingly mysterious because shouldn't someone have seen this? But the people who knew one part of it weren't connected with the people who could make a judgment call on it. So what you're seeing, especially in the financial system, because of the relentless wave of mergers which have created the mega banks that we see today, is that internally it's a spaghetti of bits, and they're trying to patch the technological problems with people. And as you know, when you have information that passes through people's hands, every hand it goes through has a probability of getting it wrong. You know, they spell my name one way, the next one spells it another. The organization says there are two different people. You need to look at the internal information structures of these organizations, and you will see invariably that these compliance people are, they're not operating efficiently, they're operating grossly inefficiently, and they're compensating for the inability of information to be exchanged and queried and assessed quickly and centrally. And this is a huge issue in the entire financial system because of this merging process.
Great, George. Thank you very much. George, can you a bit explain Aston University's relationship with African nations, especially with Nigeria?
Yes. We, just as a university, and in particular the business school, has a very large number of alumni in Nigeria. We have, as I said earlier, long fostered entrepreneurial activity, entrepreneurial training. We do degrees in entrepreneurship. We have a very entrepreneurial and small and medium-sized enterprise focus in the business school. And these kinds of issues are very important in everywhere, but in particular in what people call emerging market countries. There are very few really large businesses. Most businesses in these countries are small, medium-sized. And some places, Nigeria is an example of a place which is full of entrepreneurial people. It's a culture which is very entrepreneurial. And the result is that we've had for many, many years, significant numbers of Nigerian students and they've gone back and been very successful in business in Nigeria. So it's really one of the principal international student sources for the university as a whole.
Great, thank you very much. And is that relating to Aston being based in Birmingham, or this nothing to do with any sort of related immigrants population in Birmingham?
Well, actually, it is in a way because it's not because we have a lot of immigrants from Nigeria in Birmingham, not at all. It's because the Midlands, the center of Britain where Birmingham is the home of a very large proportion of the small and medium-sized enterprises in the United Kingdom, the equivalent of the German Mittelstand. And the result is our work with businesses is very large. Well, we work with the businesses that are around us, and these are small and medium-sized enterprises, and the things they need to do and how to need to do to improve their performance are applicable to all small and medium-sized enterprises. And so the skills we've developed and that we develop in the students are applicable very widely. So yes, in that sense, it's a quite natural thing for students from, we have a lot of students from India for the same reason. These are countries which are very entrepreneurial, but the bulk of the business structure and business employment is in small enterprises, medium-sized enterprises, new enterprises, and those kinds of students are attracted to what we have to offer. And as you say correctly, we have that to offer because we are embedded in a similar kind of society with similar economic structures.
Yep. So I have some comment to echo your observation. It didn't occur to me that this stealing in the nationwide sort of initiative or top management, top officials or government people were the issue. But as you pointed out, it reminded me about the case for Myanmar, which is now closed again because of a military coup. But before the coup, that when Aung San Suu Kyi was in power for about 5 years, initially that Aung San Suu Kyi was very close to Oxford University. So I was a part of Oxford University's representative to receiving 2 people from there. And when I was there, that some group of NGO group has made a survey how much money has been actually spent on the actual people who are doing the business. For example, Japanese government funded the building for hospital, but and it was charged, let's say 100, but the amount of money which has been received by the construction company is only 10. So 90% is disappeared. Yes. And according to this NGO group, even the very reputable international organization, the efficiency is less than 50%. That's what they said. So another 50%, it may be legally, it is legal way to extract money, but still from the people's point of view, the voters' point of view, resident point of view, or visitors' point of view, residents' point of view, I think that the efficiency is very, very important. And you pointed out, as long as we use a cash and inefficient money methodology payment system, this is going to remain, and it is going to be huge inefficiency there.
Yes, so and as I say, your system, if applied to the worldwide money transmission mechanism, would save 3% of global GDP. But as you point out, 90% of the money for the hospital disappeared. And that's why, yes, for the world, it's incredibly important. But in a lot of places, efficiency isn't the primary question, important as it should be. And this is the point I'm trying to make, that this technology you have is actually able to address problems quite different from just making it quicker and cheaper for you to send money to your children in another country. It's really fundamental to integrity. Yes. And that's what I'd like to stress, that we need to think of technology in the context in which activity actually takes place. And you've given some wonderful examples of exactly the point that I'm trying to make.
Thank you very much, George, for your excellent insight of where we should be looking at. This was a great session. Thank you very much, George.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye.